Okay, I'm here with Chris Collins and Richard Williams from By the Rules Conveyancing, and also Roy Sanderson from RJ Sanderson Associates. Chris and Richard were winners for the best conveyancing firm in Australia in the Client Choice Awards for 2020. They've had previous success as well in the awards that I guess came before the Client Choice Awards for us with Firm Checker. Firm Checker is an independent researcher. Previously the Professional Services Awards, now with the Client Choice Awards, which are supported by NAB. And I'm also here with Roy Sanderson, who is the Managing Director of RJ Sanderson and Associates. And RJ Sanderson won the best accounting firm in Australia for under $30 million revenue. Thanks for joining me all, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it's obviously come at a bit of a weird time to address the elephant in the room, to say the least, with the onset of the global pandemic. In the context of that, it meant that we weren't able to have the normal awards ceremony that we would have down in Melbourne. But nonetheless, what did it mean, Roy, for your team being successful in what was a pretty disruptive period for your business, I would imagine?
It was interesting that the award had been issued, and very soon after that, the virus became so huge that we put it on our staff to say, if we are the best accounting firm under 30 million Australia, then we need to step up and show everybody why we won that award. And it has been an exceptional effort by our staff. Because so much had to be done in what I would call so little time. The first thing we had to do was we did a survey of all the staff to see what software and hardware they had at home. So when we pulled the trigger, we knew what we had to do in advance so they could actually work from home. We had that organised within 4 days of every staff member having access from home. And that was credit to our IT people as well as the staff to respond to our internal survey. Then we do a monthly newsletter to all our clients, and in my first newsletter we were due to do one. I can't remember the exact date in March, but we were due to do one, and I headed the email up to say, in advance, I apologise because we're about to over communicate with all our clients because we believe we need to. And we had 2 newsletters in 1 week and 2 newsletters in the next week because we had announcement after announcement after announcement. And we have 35,000 individual clients on our books and about 5,500 business clients. So we couldn't just communicate with our business clients or our individuals. We actually had to cover off all the announcements, including instructions on how you get a job seeker or new start or unemployment benefits, because we would have had many of our 35,000 clients affected by that. The Job Keeper was about informing our not only individual clients on what that meant to them, but our business clients to say you can go on to apply for Job Keeper. And then all the other things, the state announcements, state governments, New South Wales, because we're spread around mostly New South Wales, mostly Victoria, but also a little bit in New South Wales. And the announcements that have come out of the state areas in relation to payroll tax, land tax and government grants, getting the information out there, because the information's coming to us as advisors and we had to get it out to our clients. And that capped it off with a webinar we did late last week, where we had over 300 attendees on the webinar, which was meant to go for an hour. And because we took question time, 2 hours later, we still had 90 people engaged in the webinar because we pitched it at 12 o'clock to watch over their lunch break. So, and then we had, 30 to 40 emails with more questions. So we encouraged questions. So I think we've managed to step up to communicate with our clients, because I felt there's no such thing as over communication. And because we operate out of 10 different locations, our managers and managing our staff at each of those 10 locations formed a list for each office as to the clients that you need to ring and talk to make sure they understood what they're entitled to. It's been a huge effort, but one that we're very proud of our team. And I think our clients, after the webinar, not just the questions, but I would have had 40 or 50 people just say, congratulations, well done. That's the easiest explanation I've had of all these things. It's made my life so much better. So we felt that we've really stepped up to the mark after winning the award rather than before, just to prove a point that we think we deserved and we are good at what we do.
So for you, it was really meaningful as a motivator for your team. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, yes, it was for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. And Chris, when you won the award, I guess similarly, it came at a bit of a strange time. What did that mean for your team internally? Was it a motivational piece the way it was for Roy, or did it give you sort of, I guess, the chance to celebrate a small win in the context of what was a pretty big event globally?
Yes, obviously it was just very bad timing. At the time, we weren't able to attend the awards ceremony down in Melbourne, which we were very looking forward to. I mean, yes, it couldn't have really happened at a worse time. However, in this industry, what you tend to find is matters will go from somebody selling a house to settling a matter will go from 30 to 45 days. So we actually don't feel the impact of it immediately. In fact, we're only just starting to feel the impact of new business not coming through at this moment in time. The winning the award, though, was still very important for us. We measure ourselves really on client satisfaction, not on volumes or anything else, because if you can look after the clients and the clients give you great feedback and they keep coming back to you, then your business is going to be okay. So for us, winning that award was just reinforcing something that we do all the time, which is, really focus on the client journey with us, which can last, as I said, anything up to 45 days. Then that client might come back again in 3 or 4 years' time, or they might buy an investment property, but they will always come back to us. We tend to find that once a client deals with By the Rules, that they'll come back every time they want to do a transaction with their property. The other part of the jigsaw for us is building relationships with real estate agents and brokers. And it's very hard for them to gauge how good a firm is to deal with just by the website and receiving emails and things like that from the different conveyancers. And literally there are thousands of conveyancers and law firms in Australia. One of the partners that we deal with is a company called PEXA, who do electronic settlements around Australia now. And they have over 8,000 legal partners that they deal with. So that gives you kind of insight into the fragmented market that we operate in. And to differentiate yourself within that market, you can only do it on price or on quality of service. And we focus really on the quality of service. So the Firm Checker initiative for us and the winning of that award really underpins everything that's about the company, and that is, the level of service that we can provide the client and how we look after them in that journey.
That's great to hear, Chris. And Richard, Chris mentioned that you, I guess, the head honcho at By the Rules in terms of implementing systems and processes as they relate to client service. What did you take out of it in terms of getting, getting a bit of feedback on where you stand from a client service perspective? I see you making some faces there, so do feel free to correct me if I've misinterpreted.
No, not at all. I relish your generous praise. Thank you. But I think, as Chris says, there's the one meaningful measure that we have is client satisfaction and the Net Promoter Score. And we do follow up on every, and I mean every piece of feedback that we get. We try to celebrate the wins. We try to celebrate. We try to learn from and correct anything that is anything that we can learn, anything we can pick out of a process where something falls over or goes wrong, because life's just not perfect. So it is absolutely in our DNA that we breathe customer satisfaction. It's just oxygen for us. So when the pandemic broke, one, I commend you for having the foresight to withdraw your awards event promptly, because others didn't do that. And the other thing is, so for us, it's a matter of, well, now we just got to focus on, if the pool is smaller, we've just got to focus on more than ever the way that we do business. And whilst other people are talking about pivoting business, you know, how do you pivot? That's the expression, isn't it, from the cognoscenti? We pivoted years ago. So we were already in the virtual world. So for us, it was a question of, this is a fantastic affirmation of the work that everybody does, but it also underpins the need to keep doing it. And that we don't drop our guard, that we don't get complacent, that we do follow up on every piece of feedback that we get, and that we continue to have it as part of our DNA. So for us, as far as COVID-19 is concerned, it is business as unusual. And the lead indicator is, you know, how many files we open, which we have seen to tail off somewhat, but there's still transactions, there's still business out there. So for us, we will continue to focus on the quality of delivery. Absolutely. Number one thing.
And Richard, do you think is your starting point, if I'm hearing it correctly, that by getting that client feedback and actioning on it quickly, do you find that compounds over time with the level of satisfaction that you're able to get?
Look, I think at a organizational level, yes, because there are things that we can pull out. There are trends, there are needs that come out of that, not just the Net Promoter Score, but of the internal audits that we do, all the internal quality processes that we have, if you like. Yes, it does, and it informs. And the one thing you've got to do with your group of franchisees and employees, as we have, is to, not always easy, attempt to take them along the journey with you and explain why things are as they are, why we do things the way that we do. And that's really important for keeping people all or correctly oriented.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Roy, I might flick back to you because you mentioned a lot of sort of short-term tactical responses that you had, and you were able to iterate quite quickly on what your firm was doing in response to COVID-19. If we sort of take a step back and look to, what are the universal things that you've implemented over time, I guess the high-level strategies that'll stay true, whether or not it's, you're running a purely virtual business or a business that's partially virtual and partly in person. What do you think were the universal things that you focused on that really backed up your client success? I think you're on mute there, Roy.
Sorry, we believe that the old adage that you look after staff and they look after the clients is really true. And from an accounting perspective, we made a decision to try and be as least virtual and least Zoom and email. We actually were and have been for a long time trying to get clients into our office, or we go to their office and have face-to-face conversations, especially with businesses. There is nothing better than when you drive out to a business's factory or warehouse and you sit there and talk to him about his business, have a look around, you get to know them better. And if we leave everything just to emails, in our business, we don't believe it builds a relationship quite as much for our industry. Because for us to get new clients, it generally will come from word of mouth. It's not always about the price, but it's word of mouth. So if you look after your existing client relationships, that builds referrals. You don't need to ask them, they will come, and they do come. Our growth has always been referrals. We measure every referral where it has come from, and 93% comes from word of mouth from another client. So we have focused on building those relationships and putting an effort into our staff to build the softer skills, the technical skills, so that they can build great relationships so the clients are actually impressed with what they're getting. We developed a thing called a GAP meeting, Goal Assessment Process meeting, where we'll have a coffee with a client, talk to them, not about how much profit they made last year or last month, but what are the goals of the future? Where are they heading to down the track? Do they want to retire? Do they want to sell out? What are the big things? Personal goals and then business goals. And interestingly, if it's a husband and wife business that's being run, we'll ask, generally it'll be the husband that answers first, and then we'll turn and ask the wife, what are your personal goals? Because they're not always aligned. He might say, I want to spend more time at home, and we might hear from her that I don't want him spending more time at home. So it can be quite good to dig into that. And then from those goals, we record and report what they are. We then have now something that when we go forward with each, whether it's 4 monthly, many are 6 monthly and 12 monthly, we actually go back to the goals and say, what have we done in this period of time? Because we want to get over to there for that goal. It's always stepping towards the goals.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I think what it shows is that you're not just waiting to be instructed on work and then, you know, providing a service in response to that. You're being a bit more proactive and really focusing on the client's goals. And that is actually something that we've regressed as being a key driver of decision-making for somebody who's looking for an accounting firm is basically an understanding of your business and industry. And, you know, it's not just technical expertise. And you're right, our data of our panel of over 1,000 buyers of legal and accounting services, small business owners mostly in the Australian professional services market, does indicate that most awareness will come through word of mouth. And then what people will then do is go through a bit of a due diligence process of checking things like online reviews just to make them comfortable in making that call. And, you know, looking for things like an understanding of their business and industry, which you guys have obviously done a really good job in being able to demonstrate. Chris, I just wanted to throw it over to you because it's your business model is obviously very different. You would expect that if we're looking at the difference between a firm that specialises in conveyancing versus, I guess, accounting and business advisory more broadly. But you're obviously very much a virtual online-based firm. As the accounting industry does inevitably start to go towards, in some areas, more commoditised work, the way you might say that conveyancing is, do you have any tips and tricks for people who are in, you know, more advisory-based legal services firms or in accounting firms for, as that transition of the professions goes towards more and more online, how they can still maintain that personal contact and the feel of a good relationship with their clients?
Yeah, I can probably go to that question a bit easier with the industry that we're in. We too have a good referral rate. I mean, 85% of our business at the moment is referral, and the remaining 50% is due to our marketing efforts and online efforts. So we get good referrals in spite of the fact that we're, if you like, a virtual business. All of our paralegals work from home. They work closely in geographical areas around Queensland and New South Wales. So they're very close to people who can influence their business, those being real estate agents and brokers. So they build those relationships with those real estate agents and brokers and provide the level of service that those agents and brokers like. We have a tagline, it's called Incredibly Easy Conveyancing. And our goal ultimately is that a client can use a mobile phone like this, using just apps on that mobile phone, no matter where they are in the world, and be able to buy and sell property without using anything else, without the need to have a wet signature on a piece of paper, without need to sit down and speak with somebody in an office at an inconvenient time for them, at any time of the day. So it's like a 24/7 operation. And our focus is always working on that, making it easy for the client to actually conduct what they want to conduct in the timeframes that they want to conduct them in. You've got to remember, with conveyancing, the vast majority of people will only use a conveyancer or a law firm once every 4 or 5, even 6 or 7 years. So they don't want to get involved in understanding the complexities of conveyancing and stuff like that. So everything we do when we build a product or build a service is aimed at looking at that particular product or service and saying, is this going to make the client's life easier? Is this going to improve communications, deliver a timely result to the client in the timeframes that they want? And is it also going to keep the agents and brokers and anyone else who's involved in that transaction, like banks and mortgage brokers, in the loop as easily as possible? And behind that, when they do need to speak to somebody, they're speaking to somebody who lives quite local, because they all deal with conveyancers in their local area, who understands the industry really well. All our conveyancers are very experienced. And that just leaves us to work on the the communications and things like that that are very important to clients. So we believe, I suppose, that if you adopt those kind of processes, you can work as like a virtual firm, even though you have physical locations all over the place, and still provide a high level of client satisfaction and get clients coming back to you and agents referring to you again and again and again.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense, and particularly with your key differentiator, which you're obviously trying to communicate through all of your marketing materials, is that focus on really ease of doing business with By the Rules conveyancing. If you're going to need extremely efficient back office processes to make that happen. So yeah, we've definitely seen that in the data we've collected over the journey from By the Rules and from its clients, and that's been evidently apparent. Roy, just looking to the accounting industry, do you think that there are areas of accounting that might have to go that way in terms of being hyper efficient and just hyper user friendly and easy to use, and then you'd sort of differentiate from that within your firm the more relationship based advisory services?
I think we have started going that way. Technology has jumped more in the last 3-4 years than what it did in 30 or 40 years. Online bookkeeping, bank feeds, AI, it's just, the list is amazing on how you can get access to data now that's almost live. The days of old where you would get to June 30 and 6 to 8 months later you'd have your profit and loss done. So you're really working behind the 8 ball. You don't know, you don't have stuff that's live. Now with things like Xero and MYOB Essentials, you can get bank fed up to your accounting package, automatic allocations, profit and losses straight away. The difficulty in our world used to be working out the accounts. That's become the easy part now. Bookkeeping is done more by bookkeepers and computers than what it is by accountants. Now the accountants need to step up and actually give advice. That's the difference. Our job is no longer just do the profit and loss on the balance sheet or the accounts. We have to check that it's right, and we have to maybe double check a few different things. But our real value to our clients is what comes next. It's the value we can add by looking at to the future and analysing those figures. And because of computers, we can work out that if they can bring their debtors in just a few days earlier, what effect that has on profit. There's so much more we can do from an advisory point of view, which is really what we're trained for at the start. The trouble is we get stuck in the rut of saying we're just here to do the accounts and the tax return, but there's so much more we need to do.
So you talk about getting stuck in a rut, and there's obviously a big change management piece there that's involved in one, making client service a differentiator, which you've obviously been able to do through the Client Choice Awards, but then two, making sure that you're staying ahead of the curve in terms of where the industry is going. How do you find you approach managing change internally so that you can actually achieve things? Because when you go to conferences and you have consultants come in for a 2-hour session, you can come out of there full of energy and think, oh, I've got to do this and this and this. But then when it comes to actual implementation, well, that's the difficult part. Ideas are cheap. So how do you manage that process within your firm to make sure that you're actually achieving the goals that you want to achieve?
Yeah, very good question, because change management is not easy. And if you don't have everybody on board for the trip, then it falls apart pretty quickly. What we did about 2 years ago is we employed a technology accountant, cloud-based. She's very highly skilled in IT. And there were a number of things, a number of tasks that we wanted her to undertake when she started. And she's had monthly meetings with management, and then we have every second month we have a training session where all the accountants come together in Melbourne, because we've got Albury, Wangaratta offices, and we go through and show the staff, the team, what we're actually changing and how we're going about it. And some of the things that we've introduced over the last 2 years. Now, for the last 2 years, we've had DocuSign that we didn't have prior to that. Everything was printed, signed in paper. We've introduced it. Our bookings are all online from our website. So if you want to make an appointment to see myself, go to our website and you can actually book an appointment with me or any of our staff at any of our offices. We didn't have that 2 years ago. So the idea was, because we as accountants in our normal day-to-day roles have been are always busy, we decided to get somebody in who's not necessarily client facing, but all about technology and advanced technology. What can we engage with that will save us time? So she did the testing as to what packages we would want. There's probably another 6 or 7 different things that we have done that she's tested, come back to management and said, this is my recommendation and this is why. And management, being the managers of each office, and the directors would say, very rarely would we say no, because she's come back with a recommendation that ticks all the boxes, that it's efficient. And that's how we're staying ahead of the curve on technology.
So it's really an interdisciplinary approach where you've got people that make your back office efficient, and then it frees people like you up and the client-facing side to really get out there and spend this time with the clients. And yet you can still obviously run a nice profitable business because you've got those efficient back office things in place. I guess that's kind of an upstream thing that you've been able to impact that then allows everything else to be easier.
Correct. Exactly.
And Chris or Richard, I'm not sure who would be best placed to answer this, but you've obviously would have gone through a fairly significant change management process, I'd imagine, as you've seen the industry really transform in conveyancing over the last decade. What did that look like internally for you?
Well, I'll take that one if you like, Richard. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
we actually started this journey back in, I would say, 2012. We started thinking about people working from home, and at that time, really, there wasn't the technology that there is right now. I mean, the technology that we have in place right now is far, far superior than to what it was at the time. And I'm not just talking about communications technology. I'm talking about our systems used to be on computers that were stored in the office, and everyone accessed it remotely from the office. So it was pretty prehistoric. And not only that, the software platforms that were in place at the time didn't really support people working remotely from the office very well at all. So we actually bit the bullet. We worked with a company in New Zealand to develop our own practice management system. And the practice management system is built around this policy of ours, this ethos that we have of incredibly ease in conveyancing. So every time we develop something, we're in control of it. We're not reliant on other software vendors to come along and say, this is how you have to do things. Now we develop processes and systems in place with our platform that we're happy with and that we think is important to us. And just as a byproduct, we have other firms who are using that system as well, other law firms in Australia. So they obviously like the story as well. So we did a lot of work in those early days. It took quite a long time. The advent of the NBN was very important to us, to such an extent now that we don't have a single application that runs on any of our hardware ourselves. We can be anywhere in the world using a laptop computer. We could be using a mobile phone, anything at all, and we're able to conduct business as easy as they can from here in the office in Noosa. So it's been a long journey for us. We've adapted it very well. We're continuing to adapt and evolve what we do with our remote services and stuff like that. So we don't think it's ever going to end. Someday it'll end when you have a little chip in your ear and you can be walking down the street and doing, yeah, I'll buy that property, I'll sell that property, and press a button. We have this vision of a big red button that you just press this button and all of a sudden the property moves from that person to you and you don't even know about it. For us, that will be incredibly easy conveyancing, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, it's an admirable goal to actually be working towards that. There are a few different things that came through that answer that I'd like to drill down in. One of them is that you've obviously said that you've built some of your own software, and it actually reminded me of Basecamp. I don't know if you're aware of Basecamp, a project management software, but that started off with Jason Fried developing it for his own internal purposes. And then it ended up being something that he licensed to his friends once he realized there was a demand for it. So that's an interesting little business model in and of itself. But have you found that there have been any difficulties with doing it yourself in terms of, I guess, the cost and also any path dependencies that creates? And what would be your advice to people who maybe are thinking of going down that path, having gone down it? Obviously, I imagine there would have been challenges along the way.
Yeah, well, there certainly have been challenges. We had a few false starts in the early days. we engaged a firm down in Sydney, spent six figures on developing a system. We ended up not running with it at all. And the reason for that is because we didn't, as a management group, get together and agree on how we wanted this thing to look. We had no vision what the end product would be like. We just knew we wanted to do something different, and there was nothing out there in the market at the time. So we felt that we had to do something. We were quite fortunate. We came across a product called Action Step, which is really just, if you like, a platform that allows you to build applications upon. But that platform itself controls things like workflows, document processing, accounting, and all that kind of stuff. So you build your processes around those different workflows as to how you want them to be. And it's a simple thing like pressing a button on your phone or on your computer and an SMS going out to a client saying settlement is completed, or don't forget you owe the balance of the finance today. Things before that would mean somebody would have to go on an email or pick the phone up and speak to the client. Well, now they just literally press a button and that message is gone, the client's got that message, and they can move on to other things. So it's when you focus on those little end results, you know, what the expectations are of the clients and any agents and brokers or banks involved in that process is what can you do to meet their expectations, and that kind of drives the product development. And once you understand that and you have a clear vision of where your end goals are, we found it was a lot easier to develop the software.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Obviously, us being in the software game as well, it's really important to focus it on specific client needs and pain points, so that you're not building something that, you know, might be your idea of perfect, but ultimately it's something that's expensive and beautiful that nobody actually wants except for you. So I think that ties into the feedback point as well, not just through software products, but through whatever it is you're selling. If you're actually getting that data on what are the pain points that your clients are experiencing, it means that you can be much more efficient in your efforts and not go about, you know, reinventing the wheel and having incredibly expensive processes that might not actually be the most efficient use of your time and money. The other thing that I wanted to drill down into, and this was based upon something that Roy said earlier as well, is that having happy staff really translates into higher levels of client satisfaction as well. And what I was wondering is whether the move to more of a virtual workplace has enabled your staff to, you know, kick more goals personally, and therefore had an impact on, you know, staff retention, how happy they are in dealing with clients, and whether that has an impact upon your business from a client satisfaction perspective as well.
Yeah, it certainly has. When we started this, the Queensland Law Society did not entertain paralegals working from home, working remotely. So it was quite a long process that we had to go through to convince them that we could do this, and that they could do this in a manner that the Queensland Law Society would be happy with. So once we managed to get that agreement in place, we were able to go out and look for experienced conveyancers of the model that we particularly wanted, which is client service centric. Whereas before we could not have got them, because not many of those kind of people were working in the Noosa area, and they wouldn't come up to work in Noosa. As much as Noosa is a fantastic place to live and work, most of the people that we wanted engaged lived in Brisbane or well outside of the Noosa area. So implementing a model like that allowed us to get some of the best possible conveyancers and paralegals in the industry working from us. Those are the kind of people who generally were mothers with children who needed to be at home at 3 o'clock but couldn't be because they're in the office in Brisbane. But now all of a sudden they could be home when their kids come back from school, and, you know, and meet the kids and greet the kids. So we found that we were able to get a much different, higher level of person that we could never have got before, just because they could work from home. So working from home was key to achieving what we set out to achieve. Yeah,
that's really fascinating. And Roy, I guess I wanted to sort of throw it over to you. Obviously, you've had to go through a really rapid adaptation process with COVID-19. Do you see there being some, I guess, long-term lag effects of it, whereby maybe you change things a little bit about how you do things, and it's been enabling for you in managing some of that change towards a more remote workforce where it's appropriate?
Yes, for us, not nearly as experienced as Chris and Richard from working at home. For us, it was a challenge. Our first step was to get the IT and security right, because we have 85 staff logging onto our server, and the difficulty there is to make sure that we're not going to be, attacked, and that we have security of the information we're holding for clients. So that was the first step. And now that we have been working from home for close to 3 weeks now, just this morning I had a Zoom meeting with 10 managers, and one of the things we talked around is how each manager is doing things slightly different. And some of the managers are having a 5 to 9 catch up with their team. Some are doing it every day. Some are doing it every second day. Some, twice a week, 3 times a week, or every day. Each are picking the difference. The critical point has not just been, is the work being done? Can you access it? It's also mental well-being, mental health, because working from home for people that have never done it before, it's a different world. And we're in isolation, which means, the Friday night going down to the restaurant, that's not there anymore. I'll just go out and see our friends. We just can't do that. So we've been really big on distributing in relation to mental health to make sure that our managers are team, so our team are engaged and feeling good and having and as one manager did say, I've had a few teary phone calls from a couple of the girls over what we're all going through at the moment, but to talk them through and have somebody to deal with is very valuable. The ongoing effects for us, we do a lot of personal tax returns July through to September before we get stuck into a lot of the business work. I can see now, given we are educating our clients, that personal tax returns can be done remotely by phone, email, and DocuSign, that we will be encouraging clients to say, we can do this tax return by phone. You don't need to come in. We get most of the stuff from the tax office anyway. You can scan or email us whatever documents you got, or we'll talk through it. I think there's going to be an ongoing change in our business delivery on a very high percentage of personal returns. Business returns, I think, will change because they are very easy for us to shift to doing remote. But we will go back at some point to wanting to do face-to-face with businesses, because we honestly believe our business model is clearly different to a conveyancer. For us, we want to be seeing that client every three months or 6 months. We want to have the regular. We want to be top of mind. So that will go back the way it was. But I think returns, individual returns, I think they will become much easier for clients to do by phone and email.
Yeah, so some pretty exciting changes there, but I guess also some things that are going to remain true no matter what the times are, and in accounting in particular, where you're doing the high-level advisory services, those personal relationships are obviously crucial. I'm sensitive of your guys' time, and I really appreciate that you've dedicated as much time as you have to having this chat. The final thing I wanted to do is to just go around to each of you, appreciating that Richard and Chris, you might want to be speaking from the same song sheet in terms of staying on the same page and from a branding perspective. But what do you think would be the one key piece of advice you would give to other accounting firms, other conveyancing firms or law firms out there in terms of how they can go about making a client service a differentiator for their firm? I'll start with you, Roy.
Okay, I would, unless you're a sole trader accounting firm, which, by the way, would be very, very difficult in today's world because you can't know everything, I would say that the most critical thing is to look after your staff. They look after the clients. When I say look after, and that's not just from mental health and being paid well, it's from education, it's from career. If you look after this, rewarding, patting on the back, recognition within their peers when they've got 5 years of service or got a degree under their way, looking after the staff, I believe, is critical because they're the ones that look after the clients.
Makes good sense. And Richard, from your perspective, what would be the one key thing?
I would say don't be afraid to retain your personality, because people still buy from people, even in a virtual world. You can have the best virtual process in the entire world, but one of the things that makes us stand out is how well our individual conveyancers connect with their client. And so I would say embrace that, don't hide from it.
Sounds good. And Chris, how about you?
I'd say build a culture. I agree with both what Roy and Richard said, by the way, they're very important. But building a culture that really does embrace client service and client satisfaction, and realizing it's not just lip service. You have to act on the good as well as the bad. Don't just jump down people's throat when there's a problem. Try and help them understand what that problem is, and then celebrate all the good things that you do with your team, and create an environment where everybody is working together to provide the kind of service that your company becomes well known for. It's a long journey, and it needs to be driven from the top and right through to throughout the whole business, but it's worth the journey.
Thanks very much all. Chris, Richard, Roy, really appreciate your time today, sharing some of your insights on how you made client service a differentiator at your firm. Congratulations again on your success in the Client Choice Awards. Obviously that was a really exciting achievement and hopefully something that you can replicate in future years. And to anyone out there who watches this, if you would like to potentially try a firm checker and be involved in the Client Choice Awards next year, just drop me a LinkedIn message and we can help you get going. Thanks again all, really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.